Good evening and welcome into the Toasted Tavern, the post All-Star edition of the Tavern. I'm your host, Michael Wanknecht, alongside Scott Tobin, fresh off a weekend at the beautiful Lake of the Ozarks, and a perfect, absolutely perfect weekend to be down at the lake for sure. And Scott, man, you look refreshed, you look excited, and after the weekend that the Cardinals had, I don't blame you.
No, man, it was a good weekend all the way around. Yeah, it was nice to get down to the lake. Can you believe we're talking about mid-July in Missouri, and we're talking about highs in the low 80s and lows in the 50s and 60s, and it was almost cool a couple of nights sitting out on the deck in the evening. But it was a beautiful weekend. Lots of people at the lake had a nice, refreshing getaway. The first time I've been able to get away all summer because it's been kind of crazy, much needed. But yeah, I'm refreshed and ready to talk. And we got lots to talk about, and our Cardinals are doing well, and so everything is good. But how was your weekend, man? How's everything going on with the Wagon Connects?
Oh, so far so good. I mean, this weekend was for me a bit of a lull in things. I was out of town the weekend before. I was down in Florida, hit up Universal and Disney, and spent way too much money. But that's a whole different story. This weekend was more about just kind of settling things back down, getting ready for the school year, which is rapidly approaching. We're about a month away from things getting back and going. As far as Lindenwood's concerned, we actually got soccer games coming up the week before school starts. So third week of August, we're back to doing multiple things over at the university. So it's coming quickly to a close this summer, and it's hard to believe that that's the case, but it is what it is. And I'm just glad that, both of us were able to take a little bit of a vacation and a little bit of a lull in the sports world. I mean, I know we had the All-Star break for baseball. Obviously, NBA Summer League is kind of in full swing. WNBA is going. They had their All-Star weekend this weekend as well. So plenty of things still kind of going on. But, with the Olympics coming up at the end of the week, things kind of slowed down for a little bit. Now we're about ready to ramp up and go full tilt into the Olympics. And then, scary to say, trade deadline and playoff race in Major League Baseball.
Well, not only that, we start talking about the end of next week, NFL training camps open. College football is right around the corner. Yeah, the sports schedule is definitely about to pick up. High school football is about to start. All the high school sports are, in camps and stuff right now. In a couple of weeks, there'll be seasons. And a month from now, we'll be talking high school football, which will also add to both of our schedules as we do some games. And yeah, summer's winding down and fall's right around the corner, man. We'll be talking about Christmas before we know it.
Oh, geez, don't even get me started on that. That's way too far in the future. And yeah, summer is not what it used to be when you were back in school. I mean, you look forward to these 3 months of just kind of hanging out, having fun, being with your friends. But when you get into adulthood, there's really no such thing as summer unless you're a teacher or a college professor. You're just working all the way through the year, and it just keeps going and going and going. But if you're like us and you get a chance to work in the sports industry, it's not as bad because you're getting to kind of do something that you love around a program that you love, which is sports. And just because this is not a paid gig that we got going on right here, we still get a chance to talk about sports, and that's really cool. And yes, Michael, Christmas in July. It actually is a thing, isn't it? Christmas in July. I'm pretty sure Hallmark has like a whole month of Christmas movies dedicated to that, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We've got Christmas in July promotions going on at the ballpark this month, too. Actually, next Monday, the 29th, when the Cardinals come back into town, is Ugly Sweater Day. So you can get your Christmas Cardinal ugly sweater with Fredbird all over it if you come to the ballpark next Monday, the 29th. So, yeah. Christmas in July is in full swing, and yes, Hallmark and all of those channels, Hallmark and Up, and all of those channels have been showing nothing but Christmas movies for the last month. So it's crazy. It's right around the corner, man.
Looking at the schedule, next Monday, sunny and a high of 89. So yeah, definitely a perfect day to be wearing a sweater. So make sure you enjoy that as much as possible.
If you have some added pounds you want to lose before the holidays, throw that sweater on, go sit in the sun at Busch Stadium, and you'll be all set.
See, there you go. The Cardinals think of everything. They think of everything. Well, let's just jump into the Cardinals because they opened their post All-Star schedule in Atlanta and didn't start off all that great. Rain out on Friday, which pushed that game to a Saturday doubleheader. And, the game actually started off relatively good for the Cardinals. Kyle Gibson had a fantastic outing, went 6 2/3, gave up just a run. But Cardinals didn't score enough runs. They only had that 2-0 lead going into the 7th inning. 2-run home run by Eddie Rosario tied things up. Game went to extras, and then the Braves won it in the bottom of the 10th inning. But despite that loss, a relatively good game for the pitching staff and for Alec Burleson. We're going to talk a little bit more about him after we get through the resumption of this 3-game series. But Burleson started off hot, just like he left off at the end of the All-Star break. Kyle Gibson pitched very, very well. Fernandez gave up the 2-run home run. He's been a solid part of that bullpen all year this year, so it's bound to happen. You're not going to be perfect throughout an entire season. And then Roycroft gave up the sac fly in the bottom of the 10th inning, which ended up winning the game for the Braves. But overall, still not a bad game because you held their biggest hitters kind of hitless in that first game. So even though it's a loss, you can kind of look at that and go, okay, it wasn't bad. And as they move through the series, it doesn't look as bad after these last 2 games.
No, Kyle Gibson pitched a great game. He actually didn't give up any runs because, he gave up a 1-out single with 2 outs in the 7th, and Ollie pulled him. And then the first pitch Fernandez threw, Eddie Rosario hits the 2-run homer and ties it. So, you had to second guess that move just a little bit because Gibson had been breezing through it. But I know it was hot yesterday in Atlanta, and it was the 7th inning, and so they pulled him. But yeah, I was a little worried when they lost that one. I'm like, oh man, that's not how you want to start the series against the Braves. And I was a little worried too because Sonny Gray hadn't necessarily been great his last few outings. So I was a little concerned about how that second game was going to go and how they were going to bounce back. Another positive in that first game, though, is we saw Nolan Arenado hit a home run, which, we're starting to see Nolan's power come back a little bit. He's making a lot more contact and he's starting to drive the ball a little bit, which are both really good signs. And he's starting to play Nolan Arenado third base, which made some really, really good plays in all 3 of these games this weekend. So those are all positive things that definitely is something to look forward to and build as we talk about the second half.
Well, and like I said, we'll talk about Burleson a little bit as well. He singled gave the Cardinals the 1-0 lead after Mason Wynn hit a quote unquote triple to lead off the game, and then Arenado hit that ninth home run of the season. But moving into game 2, Cardinals jumped out to an early lead. They didn't let what happened in game 1 kind of affect their mindset. They came out, popped out to a quick lead, had to hold on a little bit for that victory, a 9-5 win. A couple of home runs that were given up by Sonny Gray. Actually gave up 4 home runs in the game, but the Cardinals scored 9 runs. So you kind of take that and work with it. The only troubling thing there is the fact that, as you said earlier, Gray has kind of struggled the last couple outings, and we see that kind of continuing here in this one. He did strike out, 10 batters in the game. So it's not like he's missing. He's just either striking guys out or he's serving some stuff up. So you look at it and you go, okay, the Cardinals won, everything's good. Just kind of keep things rolling the way that you were, and maybe Gray will find his way back to it. Again, Burleson, RBI single in the inning after the Braves tied it up in the second inning. He also had an RBI single in the top of the 9th. He was 3 for 4, 3 hits, 3 RBIs, and a run scored. You had Gorman hitting a 2-run homer, Contreras, Donovan, each driving in some runs as well. So the offense really kind of started to click in that game, despite the fact that, Gray gave up those 4 home runs, 2 of them to Marcelo Ozuna, who had been quiet in game 1. But again, if you're giving up solo home runs, it's not that big of a deal, especially if your team is scoring, and that's what the Cardinals did in that second game.
Yeah, it really did. And, you go back to the beginning of that game, and there was a momentum switch in the first inning because the Cardinals jumped out. Mason Wynn got his second triple in 2 games in that first inning, and then Burleson drove him home. Cardinals are up 1-0. The Braves come right back, tie it up 1-1, and then Austin Riley hit what was at the time a 2-run homer to give the Braves a 3-1 lead. But luckily, the Cardinals had a good vantage point from their dugout and realized that the ball curved and went foul. They asked the umpires for an umpire review. They looked at it, and the ball was definitely foul. And so instead of the Braves being up 3-1, it goes back to 1-1, and then you jump into the next top of the second. Nolan Gorman hits a 2-run homer. The Cardinals score 4 runs in the second, and they're off and running. So, that call really changed the momentum of that game and the course of the weekend, honestly, because if the Braves are up 3-1 in that first inning, it might have gone a whole different way all weekend long.
Oh, exactly. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you get the 1 run in the top of the first and the Braves come right back, tie it, and potentially take the lead. That can really kind of mess with your mindset. But the fact that, as you said, it was just 1-1 after 1, you felt like, okay, momentum switched to us. And then they came out and they scored 4 runs in that second inning to retake that lead and pushed it up to a 6-2 lead. And then it was 6-5 after those 3 home runs and 4 batters, by the way, in that inning where they just pulled themselves back into it. The Braves did. But again, Cardinals continue to kind of, chip away at that. Burleson, Donovan driving in some runs in the top of the ninth, and Kyle Leahy. How about that first save of the year? 2 innings pitched, just a hit and 2 strikeouts as well. Not only did he pick up the save, he gave the bullpen some rest as well. The fact that the Cardinals in that doubleheader barely used relief pitching, that is huge. I mean, yes, you're coming out of the All-Star break, so you guys are rested a little bit, but you were able to save Helsley. He didn't pitch the first 2 games. You save him for the game today, and because we're going to Pittsburgh starting tomorrow, he's ready to go for that series as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it was huge. And you're right, Kyle Leahy, 2 innings, got his first save. And as his reward, he's back in Memphis because he was the 27th man yesterday. They got to bring him up for the doubleheader. So great job, kid. Congratulations on your save. Have fun on your trip back to the AAA.
I mean, at least he got a result out of it. At least he wasn't the 27th guy to come up and either take the loss or didn't even pitch.
Yeah, no, he did a great job. And like I said, he'll be back. He's pitched really well when he's been up here this year. He's kind of gone back and forth because they've had to make moves, because of all the doubleheaders they've had. And my God, have we played a lot of doubleheaders this year. They've had to send guys down, and add people and bring people up, fresh arms from the bullpen. And Leahy's done a really nice job when he's been up here. So it's just a matter of time before he's back with the club because like I said, he's been impressive when he's been here.
Well, let's move on to game 3, which was today. Cardinals ended up taking this one 6-2. They scored in 4 straight innings, although it was only a single run in each of those innings. Still, they're scoring in multiple innings, which is something this team has struggled to do at times throughout the last couple of years. Goldschmidt, Burleson, Nootbaar, Contreras all hit solo home runs. Miles Michaelis went 6, gave up 2, walked 1, struck out 3. Here's the stat that kind of blew me away a little bit, just because, it seems like we've always kind of played the Braves well. This is the first season series win against Atlanta in 6 years.
Yeah, the Braves have been tough on us. They've been one of the powerhouses in the last few years, and the Cardinals have been up and down the last few years. So yeah, they've kind of taken advantage of us, but we played them really tough this season, and like you said, win the series 4-2, and that's huge when you look at the postseason implications. Because if you end up tied with the Braves potentially, and you're looking at that wild card spot, then the Cardinals would win that head-to-head battle and could potentially end up with home field in that first round of the playoffs if they would meet up. So that's a big thing. Or depending on how things work out, you could even knock some other teams out if you win those series. And that's something real quick while we're talking about it, that's something you got to look at with the Cardinals because they've won the season series now with the Braves. They tied the season series with the Mets. They're winning the season series against the Padres. They're winning the season series against the Giants. They tied the season series against the Diamondbacks. So they're either going to have a tie or the series lead on all of these teams. They've got the lead against the Pirates and the Reds as well. So all of these teams that are right behind them and fighting for postseason wildcard position, the Cardinals are in really good shape to be, if it comes down to tiebreakers and draws, the Cardinals have put themselves in a really good position.
Yeah, I mean, we're not looking at the NL Central. I mean, you're still 5 behind Milwaukee. Obviously, you got some games against them still to come, so that could change things up. But right now, you're a game and a half up on the Mets, Diamondbacks, and Padres for that second wild card spot. Pittsburgh's just a half a game behind those 3 for that third wild card spot, and you're really closing in on the Braves as well. And part of that is the fact that the Braves obviously lost Ronald Acuna for the season, but another big loss that happened in today's game in the 9th inning was the Albies gets a left wrist injury. It's a fracture in his left wrist. He's going to be out 8 weeks. That could be another big piece of this Braves team that won't be able to help them push towards a potential playoff spot. And now you're looking at, no Spencer Strider. I mean, this Braves team is holding on by a fingernail right now. It's going to make things interesting to see if they're a buyer or a seller at the deadline. Right now they're in a playoff spot, so you have to sit there and think they're a buyer, but man, if they go south here in the next week, that could change pretty quickly.
Well, and not just Spencer Strider and Ozzie Albies. They lost Max Fried yesterday. Fried's out for 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. So, they've taken hits all over the place. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, I think they'll still probably be a buyer more than likely because the wild card's so up in the air, and pretty much everybody's going to be buyers at this point, except for the Marlins and the Rockies, I think, or at least try to be. So, yeah, I think they'll still be in it. But, yeah, the Braves have taken some big hits. So, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out for them the next few weeks.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about buyers, sellers, trade deadline, all that stuff next week because right now we have on the books, Camo X's Tom Ackerman is potentially going to be on the show next week some way, somehow. So we'll be definitely talking about MLB trade deadline, buyers, sellers, where people are at, who could be on the move. All of that stuff will be coming next week as the trade deadline surprisingly is coming up in just 10 days. So it's going to be very, very quickly approaching. But we'll leave that off to the side. We got to go back. We were talking a little bit about Alec Burleson here in this 3-game series, and I didn't realize this at the time. And I think you said it last week or the week before about how you're like, yeah, I admit I missed on Alec Burleson. I was kind of the same way in a sense, but it goes a little bit further than that. Not only did we miss on, what he's been able to do, but what he's been able to do is lead this team in hitting, home runs, and RBIs. And you were talking to me before the show. He's not only leading the team in RBIs, but he's been doing something pretty special here the last, month or so. He's had at least one run driven in each of the last 6 games and 9 of his last 10. And that puts him up there near the top of Major League Baseball, not just the Cardinals, not just the National League Central, not just the National League, all of Major League Baseball.
Yeah, he's been impressive. And, it's been going on for more than a month now as he's second to just Aaron Judge in the last month in RBIs in baseball. He's become a run producer at the top of the lineup. And, that was kind of his history, in the minors. He led the minor leagues in batting average a couple of years ago. We hadn't seen it really translate to the majors until this year. The Cardinals kept telling us, he just hit into really bad luck last year, which was like, okay, can a guy really hit into bad luck a whole year? But maybe he did. Maybe he really did just hit into bad luck because he's proving to be a good hitter, and he's got more power than I realized he had this year too, as he hit his 18th home run. So he and Nolan Gorman are now tied for the team lead in home runs at 18, which is pretty impressive. And the Cardinals may end up with 5 guys with 20 home runs because you got those 2 at 18. Contreras hit his 11th today. Goldie hit his 14th. Nato's at 9. So I would imagine that those 3 guys will all get to 20. And then you have Burleson and Gorman. So you might have 5 guys with 20, 25, 30 home runs on this ball club. And Brendan Donovan's got 9. It's not impossible that he gets to 20 as well or close to it.
Well, and talk about left-handed bats, too. I mean, this is something that the Cardinals have struggled to develop and bring in over the last, 5-10 years is a good, powerful left-handed bat. And the fact that you've got Burleson over there, you got the switch hitter and Gorman. I mean, you've got some power from the left-hand side. And that's been a little bit of a great equalizer for this Cardinals team. Is now teams can't stack their pitching staff or their bullpen against you as far as just going up against righties. You've got some lefties that can provide some pop. I'll even throw in Lars Nootbaar in there as well. I mean, yeah, he's just coming back from injury and all that stuff. But again, another guy that can provide pop from the left-hand side. This team is pretty well balanced. And I know a lot of people are going to sit there and say, oh, yeah, it's a smokescreen. This team isn't as good as they actually are, blah, 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 blah. But you know what? They're still winning. Until they go on another epic losing streak, this team is doing fine. They're in the playoff hunt. They're in the division hunts. They're kind of everywhere right now. And with the deadline coming up, that's going to be the key for me. What moves they make at the deadline is really going to tell me what John Mozeliak thinks of this team and really what the ownership group thinks of this team. Because if they really go all out and try to make big moves, they feel like they can win a championship.
There's 2 ways to look at that. And here's the thing I'm going to say. And I agree with you. I agree with you in one sense. I'm not sure that there's going to be big moves out there to be made. I'm not sure. I know everybody's like, oh, I want them to go all in. I'm not sure that there's going to be anybody out there that's all in worthy to go after at the trade deadline. I'm not sure that guy's there. I'm not sure you're going to see the big names move this year because I think a lot of teams, everybody's still in it for one thing. And there's just not a whole lot of healthy ace pitchers that are going to be available. When you say, okay, I want to see them all go all in and make a big move, what are you talking about? Because I'm just not seeing that big move out there available, honestly.
I mean, I wouldn't say like in years past, big move means big name, and that's I think that has changed, at least in my mind. It's not so much what big name can I bring in, but are we making the big moves to address the needs that this team needs? And we've seen it with all the rumors that have been going around as far as, especially pitchers. It's not like big names are out there, but if a guy fits the profile of the rotation or the need and they go after him, that's in my mind the move that I'm looking at as a big move. I mean, you're right. There's just no big names that are going to be able to be moved, whether it's injury or whether it's the fact that you're looking at who's still left in this game. I mean, I'm looking at the wild card standings right now. Toronto is 9.5 games back right now, and they're still in the wild card hunt. You could even throw in the Angels at 12.5 back in the American League as still being a team in the playoff hunt. So, I mean, that essentially leaves the A's and the White Sox as the only two teams that realistically could be sellers in the American League. Flipping over to the National League, just Colorado and Miami are the only two you could theoretically say, because the Nationals and the Reds are only 4 games out of the third wild card spot there as well. So of the teams in Major League Baseball, 4 are considered realistic sellers right now. And obviously things can change in a week. Those gaps could expand out. But right now, 4 teams are sellers. And if you're looking at those 4 teams and you're going, yeah, there's a handful of guys on those teams that can make a difference for a playoff team, why would they be already sellers if they had guys that could make a difference? There are a few. I mean, there's White Sox have a guy or two, the A's have a guy or two, but then on the flip side, you got to look at those teams and go, well, if these guys are drawing interest, wouldn't we want to keep them to see if it can work for the next couple of years? I mean, there's so many moving pieces. It's again, it just makes being a GM and being part of a front office group unbelievably stressful at this time of year.
Yeah, it does. And you talk about the White Sox, everybody's like, oh, Garrett Crochet, Crochet. He's had one good year. This is really his first year as a starting pitcher. So for one thing, the White Sox have ton of control, cheap control over him. So why did they necessarily want to trade him? Why not keep him and build? Plus the fact that he was injured last year, he missed time because he's had Tommy John. He's had multiple injuries, which is why this is the first year that he's really started. He's going to run to a point where he's going to have an innings limit as you get into late in the season. So is he even going to be available and effective as you get late into the season? So there's some questions. Plus, like we said, because he's the hot name, it's going to take a haul to get him. They're going to ask for the moon. And they don't have to trade him because they've got control for a couple of years. They can say, you know what, we're going to hold on to him until next year, let him build up even more equity, have another good year, and then we'll trade him for an even bigger load next year. So I mean, there's no guarantees that the White Sox are going to move him. I mean, there are going to be some pitchers you think, and like you said, things could change. There's teams that are still in the hunt right now that may realistically look at it and say, okay, we could get in the postseason, but we're going to get swept. So let's just go ahead and make trades now and see what we can build for next year or in a couple of years. But, I don't think there's going to be, last year we saw Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer and, those names I don't think you're going to see at the trade deadline this year. I just don't. There's a lot of talk that the Blue Jays may trade Bo Bichette. Well, Bo Bichette's hurt. He's on the disabled list. So there goes that move. Are they going to trade Vladdy Jr.? Probably not. Maybe they traded Kevin Gausman, who the Cardinals should be interested in if they do. There's rumors that Nathan Eovaldi, we went back to the White Sox, Eric Fedde. I mean, there are some guys, but I think, again, if the Cardinals go out and get it, like you said, you need to address the needs. But there's a lot of Cardinal fans that if they go get Eric Fedde or Nathan Eovaldi, they're going to be like, oh, they went and got the cheapest guy out there. Who's this guy? Cardinal fans need to realize that you can't go out there and get a superstar at the trade deadline very often because they're just not there. So I think you're right. I think they will make big moves, and I think they'll improve the team. But I think fans need to kind of temper their expectations on the name and not look at the name, but look what the guy's done this year and look at his stats before you freak out and say, oh my God, Mo's dumpster diving again. They're not trying to win because, if you go get a Nathan Eovaldi and another pitcher, you could really improve this rotation big time. Or an Eric Fedde would be a nice step up. I mean, so there are moves to make. Fans just need to kind of temper and not just look for the big name because, like I said, I'm not sure that big names are going to be there, but that doesn't mean you can't still get quality at the trade deadline.
Well, just look at the fact that the last handful of years when Mo has gone dumpster diving, they've been our strongest pieces after the trade deadline. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, we talk about the dumpster diving that he does, and yet if you were to go back and look at the stats, I'd say 75% of the guys that he brings in that mode end up being the best parts of the Cardinals teams in the second half of the season, ones that push them to a playoff spot or help them go on a long win streak. So, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that, I'm calling Mozeliak the greatest GM or president of baseball operations, in history, but you have to look at it and go, okay, maybe he does have an eye for some of this lower end talent that can help his team be successful. The only problem is yes, maybe they've given up on some of this young talent a little bit sooner than they wanted to. But, again, he's had to make moves. He's had to fill gaps. And sometimes the higher end, higher profile guys just don't work out. But it feels like some of the lower tier people seem to do well. I mean, just look at what Tommy Edman has done. Brendan Donovan, Lars Nootbaar, these guys that, weren't getting looks. And yet here they are providing what the Cardinals need when they need it. It just keeps going back to that blue collar nature of this organization and of this city that it just seems to work. And yes, it's not sexy the way they go about doing it, but if they win, they win, and who knows how it's going to play out from there.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And again, part of this whole thing goes back to a lot of the media just ripping the Cardinals, saying, oh, they're not spending money, they're not doing this, they're not doing that, and they're not really watching this ball.
We've been there.
Oh, we have, yeah. Absolutely. I'm not going to say that we don't do it sometimes too, but a lot of people don't actually watch the product that's on the field. They just want to rip and complain and say, oh, they're not doing this, they're not going out and spending big money, they're not signing the big name free agents. Well, and we've talked about this a million times. How many of those big name free agents that have gotten signed in the last couple of years have been worth the money that they got signed to? Most of them are hurt or have been ineffective.
Yeah, 100% agree. I mean, and even the guys that have done some production, an Arenado or a Goldschmidt, there have been moments where they've struggled and maybe haven't been worth the money. But again, they've done enough in certain instances to change this team in a different direction. So we'll see how it plays out. We're going to take a quick break here. We're going to come back. We're going to talk a little bit about the All-Star festivities and games and the excitement or lack thereof around Major League Baseball's All-Star game. So we're going to step aside real quick. We'll be right back with more Toasted Tavern. All right, back here on the Toasted Tavern. It was the All-Star break last weekend. And again, I'll be perfectly honest, I was out of town. Didn't watch a single second of the Home Run Derby or of the All-Star game. And I'm not the only one, apparently. Looking at the Home Run Derby, obviously it was a relatively exciting Home Run Derby. Teoscar Hernandez defeated Kansas City Royals, superstar in the making, Bobby Witt Jr. in the final. It came down to the last swing from Bobby Witt Jr., which that's exactly how you want a Home Run Derby to end. An opportunity to either tie it and send it to a hit-off or a guy winning with a ball falling just short. And that's exactly what happened there for Hernandez. First Dodger to win the title, and it was his first time in the Derby as well as Bobby Witt. Witt hit 20 home runs in the first round. Hernandez had 19. Witt took out Ramirez in the first round, and Hernandez went to a swing-off, which Hernandez won 2-1, and then it was a 14-13 first final for Hernandez, taking it in that one. Witt hit his last swing 406 feet to the deepest part of the park, hit the wall, leaving him one home run short. But here's the thing that you have to look at. Yes, exciting Home Run Derby. Got some good young names in there. You had obviously some big names that are part of Major League Baseball, but just 5.45 million viewers for that one, down 11% from last year. And that's a bit of a problem because the All-Star game was up in viewership up to 7.6 million, which was a 6% increase from last year. But last year's was the lowest recorded viewing of the All-Star game in history. This one now considered the second lowest viewed All-Star game in history. And it begs the question, is there any excitement around All-Star Weekend for Major League Baseball, even with all the young talent that is now out there and that's being promoted, and even some of the old guard as well? Is there just any excitement left in the Midsummer Classic?
Well, it's not just baseball. You look at the NBA viewership of their All-Star Weekend is down. The NHL is abysmal viewing. Nobody watches it. The NFL, I mean, when was the last time you watched the Pro Bowl? You know, right? Yeah, no, it's All-Star games have just kind of lost their luster. And here's the question I have to ask people, because all you hear all the time is Major League Baseball needs to promote their young stars. Major League Baseball needs to get their young stars out there. Major League Baseball needs to get their young stars out there. So, okay, the home run derby comes up. You have Gunnar Henderson. You have Bobby Witt. You have Teoscar Hernandez. You have Alec Boehm. You have all these young kids. And what are the major media outlets saying? Are they saying, oh, man, tune into the All-Star game because these young and rising stars are playing? No, they're saying, who cares? There's no Shohei Ohtani. There's no Aaron Judge. Who are these guys? We don't want to see these kids. We want to see the proven stars. So do you want the proven star, or do you want to promote the young star? Because the media was telling people, you don't need to tune into this because it's not important because Shohei Ohtani's not there. So, I mean, the message that's being sent out is wrong, for one thing, and it was a really entertaining All-Star game because, like you said, those guys showed up. Alec Boehm was impressive. I don't think anybody expected him to do what he did. Bobby Witt, Gunnar Henderson, their first times. A lot of times these young kids, when they get into a home run derby, they really struggle and don't do a whole lot. They knocked out everybody. Ozuna and Pete Alonso, the guys who were veterans that people thought were going to win. I mean, what Alonso hit like 8? Ozuna only hit 13. I mean, the big name guys didn't do what they were supposed to do, and these young guys showed up. But like I said, because the national perspective and even local perspective on radio stations and stuff, or who really cares because it's a bunch of people nobody knows. Well, if you want to grow the sport and you really care, you're telling people to tune in and watch these young guys, because Bobby Witt and Gunnar Henderson, one of those guys may win the AL MVP, and nobody wants to talk about him because it's not Aaron Judge. So again, they say, oh, baseball has a problem. But then when baseball tries to promote these kids, the media tries to shoot it down. So it's like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I mean, and I get it. They're both those guys play in quote unquote small markets. I mean, Baltimore is a decent sized market, but it's very comparable to St. Louis in the fact that it's a mid market kind of area. Kansas City, same sort of thing. No one wants to see those guys because they don't feel like they're a big market kind of guy. But you look at it and you see there's talent there. I mean, we see the excitement in Kansas City for Bobby Witt Jr. And yes, Salvador Perez, he's a little bit older, obviously, but you're seeing that excitement with the fan base, and it's getting bigger. You're seeing what Baltimore is doing this year. I mean, yeah, they may not be a playoff contender in a sense. I mean, I think they're sitting right now, looking at it, they are, let me see, they're leading the East right now. So they are a playoff contender. 16-39. But see, again, no one's talking about it because it's a mid-market team. They're not the Yankees. They're not the Red Sox. So no one really gives a crap about them, which sucks because they are a good team. They got a lot of young talent. I mean, we talked about it 2 weeks ago about the fact that Jackson Holliday, the number 1 overall pick, might very possibly be on the trading block because they've got a guy that's blocking them right now. And if it makes them better and potentially puts them in a World Series, they may have to consider something like that. But no one's going to talk about it because they're the 3rd team on the East Coast. So who's gonna listen to anything that goes on with them?
Well, I mean, that's just, I mean, again, the New York LA bias is ridiculous. I mean, ESPN's a joke, honestly, anymore. I mean, it really is. It really is. It's not what it used to be. And, anyway, I'm not going to get on a rant about sports media, but it's kind of gotten ridiculous in a lot of ways. But, yeah, there were young players that showed out and they need to be showcased. And you talk about nobody caring about players in small markets. I'm pretty sure that guy named King Griffey Jr. and Alex Rodriguez in Seattle, which is not a big market and nobody pays attention to because it's on the West Coast and they play at 9:00 at night, but they became stars. So, these kids in these other markets need to get attention because they are the future of the game.
Well, Randy Johnson up in Seattle as well. I mean, he went from Montreal. But I mean, he
Yeah.
went from Montreal to Seattle, and yet he became the big unit. He was the guy. I mean, he's the one everybody wanted on their pitching staff. So,
Right.
I mean, you can't overlook these small and mid-market teams because they've got stars, and Major League Baseball needs to push these stars. And yes, if that means you got to go to the Midwest and go do a game there, or talk to a player in the Midwest, you got to do it because they could be the future. And yes, maybe they do eventually end up on the East or West Coast with an LA team or a New York team, but that's because they're going to be really, really good and sought after. You should be promoting them now so that those East and West Coast teams have Midwest fans that are wanting to tune into those games. And I think that's the big thing that gets lost is, yes, you've got a lot of fans on the East and West Coast, but really you don't, especially on the West Coast. Look at Dodger games and Angels games. Yes, the Dodgers do well. They bring in fans. They're late arriving fans. They leave early. I mean, if you want committed fans to watch games, I mean, if you look at viewership numbers for, Stanley Cup finals or any of the other sports, and for cities that don't have teams in these events, a lot of the Midwest cities are the ones that populate the top 10 viewership. So you've got ready-made viewers that want to watch these teams, invest in these Midwestern stars, and hopefully for the Midwest, they stick around and they bring those teams up from obscurity to prominence, like, Albert did for the Cardinals and what Sammy Sosa did for the Cubs. But at the very least, if you're Major League Baseball, you're hoping that they continue to get better and then they get pulled to those coasts so you can bring Midwest fans to those coasts for your viewership numbers. I don't think that's right. I think I want to see the Midwest continue to thrive. But if you're Major League Baseball, that's what you want. You need to invest in those Midwestern talent.
Yeah, no, and they have, and a lot of the talent is in the smaller markets right now. When you look around and you look at some of the best players, Ellie De La Cruz in Cincinnati, Bobby Witt, like we talked about. We just talked about all the guys in Baltimore because it's not just Gunnar Henderson, it's Adley Rushman and all the other young players that Baltimore has. You look at Pittsburgh and Cruz and the guys that are coming up in the Pirates organization, Paul Skeens in Pittsburgh, so a couple of the best young players there. So, it's all over baseball. And so, and again, the media has to do a better job of not trying to push down younger players and just promote Ohtani and Judge and realize that, and again, that's the East Coast, West Coast bias of national media. But, they've got to realize that there are a whole crop of really talented players that need to be talked about.
So let's kind of jump back to the All-Star game and all that kind of stuff. And just the fact that the viewership has completely dropped over the last handful of years. Obviously, we're not going to have a fix here. We're not going to have something that is just magically going to change everything. And you've already said it. It's not just Major League Baseball. It's all the other sports that have these all-star breaks and things of that nature. It's not what it used to be. I mean, with the interleague play in Major League Baseball, with just being able to play, across conference, you have multiple cross-conference games and all your other sports as well. It's kind of made the all-star games a little bit meaningless because they were events where people could see players that they necessarily didn't see before. And, there was a different mindset of how they go about playing it. So, do we need to change or eliminate these all-star games? I mean, I'm thinking my mindset is I look at kind of what the NFL has done a little bit with this Pro Bowl, postseason kind of thing where you're not necessarily a games being played anymore. It's more about, hey, let's just, announce who these players are, do a skills competition. And, for football, okay, maybe a flag football game is kind of fun, but I feel like that's kind of the route that need to go. And does it necessarily have to be in the middle of the season? Not really. I mean, I'm probably more akin to sitting there saying that, give the players 5 days off and let them go back home, rest up, get themselves set for the second half. And then, at the end of the year, you can announce the all-stars. And maybe at that point you do some sort of skills competition or something along those lines. But I don't know. What do you think?
I don't. Major League Baseball is not going to change it anytime soon. It's going to stay the way it is. And like you said, more people watched than last year. And they're drawing attendance. The game itself was actually sold out physically. So, and we all know that baseball makes more of its money through the gate than it does in national television anyway. So as long as people are attending and actually showing up at the ballpark, they're not going to change anything. And the same thing with the home run derby. they had almost 40,000 people at the home run derby. So, as long as people are showing up physically, they're not going to change a thing.
Well, I mean, I think having a home run derby is awesome, but what if instead of the game you do something different as far as something as like a skills competition or something along those lines? I mean, obviously we're seeing interest in the home run derby, which is a skill, but I don't know. It's interesting to sit there and think about it, because I think you're right in a sense that a game is still something that people want to go see, but if you're looking at it strictly from a viewership thing, is it worth having? But again, it's kind of splitting hairs at this point.
Major League Baseball is not looking at it as a TV viewership thing. They're looking at the attendance and people going and people coming into town from different places to be there for all the All-Star festivities and all the people. Because the All-Star game isn't just – it's just not that one day. It's a whole week, basically. Those whole 3 or 4 days around the All-Star game, they have all the Hall of Famers and all kinds of people in town, just like they did in St. Louis in 2009. And it's 3 or 4 days where hundreds of thousands of people from all over the country come into town to participate in things and have fan fest and all of those things. So they're not going to change it. And it's the Midsummer Classic. That baseball's not quick to change things that are, part of their fabric. And so it's not going to change anytime soon.
All right, just eliminate it from being shown on TV and go from make it a must-have ticket. Well, I mean, that's what you got to do. But... oh yeah, there's no way that's happening at all. It's just it's a very unique concept to think about for not just baseball but for the other leagues as well. How that all works for them. So it'll be interesting to see with the advent of streaming and cable television and all that kind of stuff. The way things are consumed now and the attention span of some generations, it definitely makes you sit back and think, how are things going to change in the near future? You and I are both purists in a sense that to see any sort of major change would be kind of scary, because I feel like it would take away from the fabric of what the game and the legacy of these leagues has. So, I'm the same way. It's just because I didn't watch this year doesn't mean I wasn't interested. Doesn't mean that I wouldn't go back and watch next year or anything like that. So it's going to be interesting to see how things like that play out. So, all right, enough about baseball. We're going to step aside for another break. We're going to come back. We'll talk a little about the Olympics, which are going to be getting underway here in less than a week. Had a little bit of a scare in the men's basketball tune-ups. We'll talk a little bit about that. I know Scott's thrilled to be talking about LeBron James once again. We're going to step aside real quick. We'll be right back with more Toasted Tavern. South Sudan, would you have guessed that they were the team that pushed Team USA basketball to the absolute limits? Yeah, I wouldn't have thought so either, but they did. They came within a hair of taking down Team USA, a 101-100 victory for the red, white, and blue in that one. LeBron hit the go-ahead layup with 8 seconds left, but they almost gave up a buzzer-beating shot to Carlik Jones, who put up a triple-double, 15 points, 11 boards, 11 assists. At one point, South Sudan led by as many as 16 points. Oh my, I know you're not a huge LeBron fan, obviously, and I know we haven't followed basketball as much as we probably should, but that would have been an absolute stunner.
It would have been, but we've seen stuff like that happen to Team USA basketball in the past, different variations of this team. I hate to say it because it's kind of blasphemy, but I have pretty much lost interest in USA basketball. I'd much rather at this point watch collegians play in the Olympics than the NBA. I mean, LeBron came out the other day and said, okay, this is my last Olympics. I'm not playing again in 4 years. It's like, really? You're not going to play in the Olympics when you're like 48? Because that's something everybody needs to see. I mean, we don't need to see you now.
He could have been playing with his son in 4 years. I mean, come on.
Yeah, because Bronny's going to make the team. Come on now. But, I mean, it's just lost interest. I mean, in the 90s when the original Dream Team happened, it was awesome because you had Magic and Leo. I mean, those were living legends that were literally together for the first time ever playing, and it was a spectacle. It was something that nobody had ever seen before, and now it's just lost interest. I mean, I don't know. It's part of my, I've lost some of my love for the NBA with guys bouncing around and chasing championships and running all over the place and crying. I don't know. I'm not going to go on a rant about that either. But I'm not really excited about Team USA basketball.
Do you think that because basketball, the playing field has somewhat leveled in the last 20 years since the Dream Team kind of came out, that it's kind of pushed Team USA back to the same level as everybody else in a sense? Because with the Dream Team, I mean, they were absolutely dominating everybody. I mean, they were winning by 30, 40 most of their games. And now, obviously, with the NBA talent that's playing across multiple countries here in the Olympics, is that something that maybe is, taking a little bit of the shine off of Team USA because they're not absolutely crushing teams that they're playing, and the playing field is pretty much leveled out?
Well, that's part of it. I mean, obviously basketball around the world has gotten much better when you see, look at the NBA draft and look at all the foreign kids that came in and were in the top of the draft. I mean, so the talent pool has definitely changed in basketball. And part of that is because of the Dream Team, that everybody saw them and all these countries went, oh, wow, now I want to be like Mike and I want to be like Magic. So that was part of that. That was part of the beginning of it. The second part of it is I'm not sure how dedicated some of these guys truly are to come in. I mean, yeah, it's a big deal. We're playing for the team, but do they really care about winning and being part of a team like those guys did that wanted to represent the country? I don't think they do. And, I think it's just, I think it's a lack of, and it's part of it's the deterioration of basketball in the United States, the way the game's played, because all of these foreign countries play a cleaner game than we do in a lot of aspects. And so it becomes a struggle and for Team USA to compete when they play really good teams in a lot of that, a lot of ways, because teams play a more team-friendly, team-centric game than playing one-on-one. Everybody stand around while I dribble for 30 seconds and then throw up a three-pointer. So yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of things that have led to it being different than it used to be. But yeah, it is what it is, and I'll watch, but I'm not really excited about it.
Well, and that's kind of leads me into the next part of this. We were talking about obviously the All-Star festivities for baseball and the viewership kind of declined there. Do you feel like there is a excitement level here in the States for the Olympics? I mean, looking at it, I mean, we've obviously dominated in a lot of these events, especially in the Summer Olympics. Obviously, swimming has been a big one, gymnastics, basketball on the men's and women's side, soccer. So many of these sports are something that America has dominated in for a very long time. But if you start to look at it, I mean, for basketball, obviously we're talking about the men's team struggling against South Sudan. Who knows if they're a team that could win the gold? They're looking for their 5th straight Olympic gold. It's possible, very likely, that they make it back to at least the game itself. For the women's side, they're a team that's a little bit older than they probably need to be at this point, but they have a lot of talents and a lot of players that have been there before, that I feel like they have a way of finding themselves to another gold medal championship is there. Gymnastics, I mean, Simone Biles, exciting, huge, but is she enough to bring tons of viewers to the screen? For soccer, I mean, for the men's side, I mean, it's the men's side. Patrick Schulte of St. Louisans leading the way for them, but really, who thinks that anybody's going to watch a men's soccer game right now? For the women, they got a new coach, no Alex Morgan on this team. They haven't won a gold medal since the first time that there was women's soccer in the Olympics, so they're not as decorated as they possibly could be as well. I mean, do you feel like there is excitement in America for the Olympics, especially with it not being on American soil this year?
No, and there will be. People love watching the track and field and the gymnastics and those amateur sports. So yeah, there'll be a big viewership. Part of the thing that will always hurt is the fact that it's in a different time zone. And so a lot of times, stuff is pre-recorded and you turn on the radio or you turn on the TV and you hear the results before you actually ever see the game when the games are in different countries. So that'll hurt viewership a little bit because it's like, oh man, I was going to watch that, but now I know what happened. So why do I need to watch this pre-recorded video that I already know the results to? So that's going to hurt a little bit. Did I just lose you?
I'm still here.
Okay. I lost you on my screen for some reason. Yeah. I can't see you. I hear you.
I still see you, so we're good there.
This is weird. Okay. All right. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see. But I think a lot of people are excited about most of the sports. Like I said, there's a lot of people that just the basketball thing, because of some of these guys that have bounced around from team to team and have kind of whined and kind of are seen as prima donnas. It's lost some of its luster, but people will be excited to watch the gymnastics, the swimming, the track and field, those kinds of things. And there are a lot of people that are excited about the basketball team as well.
So we had the 1980 U.S. Olympic hockey team. We had that huge upset of the USSR, something that kind of brought our country together in a moment that it needed to be. And we're not a show that likes to dive into politics. We're going to kind of stay away from everything that's kind of happening in that realm just to keep this as clean as possible. But doesn't this feel like in Olympic Games that if there was a moment from one of these sports or one of these teams to bring a country together, it would be this Olympic Games that something like that could happen? And if that's the case, is there a team or a sport that could rally the country in any way, shape, or form?
I mean, yeah, I think it definitely could bring people together. I think that's what the Olympics are about, right? And sports in general, we see that happen. So if a team like the soccer team or the men's soccer team or the women's soccer team or one of the basketball teams really goes on a run, or the gymnastics team, if one of those teams are really dominant and really shows out, it really could definitely bring people together and get people excited. And I think that's what everybody's hoping for.
Well, I just lost Scott, so we'll try to get him back on here as we get near the end of the show. But talking about the Olympics, lots of great sports that are going to be a part of the Summer Games. Obviously, we've talked basketball, we've talked soccer, talked about gymnastics, but which one are you most excited for? For me, being a volleyball broadcaster, I'm very excited to see what the indoor team brings for the men and women. I'm also excited to see how the beach volleyball teams fare as well. Chase Budinger, former Arizona basketball player, has made the men's beach squad. So that's going to be something to watch and see how he produces. And beach volleyball is under the Eiffel Tower. So not only going to get great beach volleyball matches, you're going to have a great view for all of those events, especially the gold medal matches as well, with the Eiffel Tower in the background. Obviously, new events like breakdancing is going to be in the Olympics, which I'm interested to see how that plays out, but I'm probably not going to watch a whole lot of it. I like the fencing and the water polo as well, some of those underrated sports that really fly under the radar, but definitely take a lot of athleticism and really are fun to watch. So, I mean, I'm excited to see, water polo and fencing as well. As trying to get Scott back in here. Looks like I might have him back. Are you back, Scott?
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry about that. I'm not sure exactly what happened just now.
Oh, good. I was just going through, some of the events that I'm most excited to watch. And I'll throw it out to you. I mean, which of these events, as part of the Olympic Games, which one are you most excited to really dive in and watch?
Breakdancing.
I'm talking about that one.
That's it right there, man. I can't wait to watch breakdancing. Some of the different ones, like you said, I heard you mention water polo. Just some of the things that you don't see a whole lot of are always kind of fun to watch when it's Olympics time. Some of the random stuff that you don't really see. Are you surprised that pickleball's not an Olympic sport yet?
It's coming. I feel like it is. I mean, it's not going to be in the next one, but give it another couple of years, you could be talking about it in 8 or 12 years as being a part of the Summer Games for sure.
I mean, if curling and breakdancing are Olympic sports, I don't know how explain to me how breakdancing is an Olympic sport. Break that down real quick.
Yeah, I can't. I just don't. I mean, I would have thought if anything, when it was at its height, when You Got Served and all those movies were coming out, I thought maybe that was when it was gonna, be put out there as something that could be a part of the Olympic Games. But we're 12 years past those kinds of movies, and now here it is. I mean, I guess they're looking at it and they're just seeing how viral dancing in TikTok form and stuff like that has become, that it might be a way to reach the youth of this world to gain interest into Olympic coverage. That's the only thing I can think of.
I mean, and I'm not trying to take anything away from talented breakdancers. It's just it seems like a weird thing as an Olympic sport to me. I don't know.
Well, I think it's just this games is when it's kind of a test to see if it can be something that's viable going forward. Because I don't think baseball and softball are part of these Olympic Games, but they're going to be back in the LA Games in 4 years. So I feel like it's just kind of that test to see if it's something that's viable for the future. And, if they get the viewership and the popularity of it grows, maybe it's something that sticks around, but we'll have to see. I mean, who knows? Maybe the next generation has future gold medal breakdancers in the future.
That would be amazing. We'll see. We'll start seeing people with white gloves and black penny loafers breaking down their best Michael Jackson impersonations and stuff. Who knows what will happen? It'll be fun.
I'm ready to break out my MC Hammer parachute pants once more and see if those are something that can still keep us going.
Oh, I'm sure they will. Parachute pants, man. Who doesn't miss those? Parachute pants and Zumbas. Remember Zumbas?
Yes. Oh my gosh. We're dating ourselves
We've
right
had
now.
some good fashion We've had some good fashion trends, right? You know what I think of when I think of Zumbas? Remember Napoleon Dynamite? Remember that movie?
Yep.
The Rex, whatever his name was, the Taekwondo teacher that had the mullet with the tank top tucked into his Zumbas.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh, what were we thinking? I mean,
yeah.
I won't even get into the Billy Ray Cyrus haircut I had in first grade. We won't talk about that.
Well, there needs to be pictures of that, though. I'm telling you.
Oh, there is one somewhere, but I am not going to produce it in any time in the future at all. So don't even ask for that.
I'm gonna try to track that down. That would be fun.
Let's just say spiked hair, mullet, and a rat tail. That's where
you went for it all.
Oh yeah. Nice. I was going for. I mean, I was leaning into the achy breaky trend.
Mullets are coming back, man. You should bust one out now.
I mean, I do play hockey, so I mean, I may need that little flow back there as the seasons continue to go on. So, all right, well, we've definitely gone through a definitely winding road here in this one. But before we get out of here, we want to let you know that we're going to be on the road this weekend. On Saturday, we're going to be heading to Carshield Field for the MLB Alumni Home Run Derby featuring the Fast Lane and the Rizzuto Show. We're going to be on the field with media credentials, hobnobbing it up with former MLB players and radio stars. Rick Ankiel, Brian Jordan, Pete Cosma, all going to be there along with the Rizzuto Show and the Fast Lane. 7 o'clock over at Carshield Field in O'Fallon, Missouri. They do have an autograph session from 4:30 to 6:30 as well. You can get your tickets now over at tickets@o'fallonhoots.com. Come on out, see some MLB stars, including Mr. Ankiel and Mr. Jordan, guys we've interviewed on our show in the past. And you can say hi to us and just have a really good time. It's going to be fun in O'Fallon, Missouri to see another home run derby.
It will be. It'll be a good time. Hopefully nobody breaks their leg like last year. They had the hamster wheel thing where people were out in the outfield and a listener got his leg snapped last year. So hopefully we don't see that happen at this year's event.
Yeah, hopefully not. Well, that's going to do it for us tonight. We'll be back with you next Sunday with Tom Ackerman from KMOX. For Scott Tobin, I am Wax. Thanks so long from the Toasted Tavern.